The Russian army has launched an offensive in the Zaporizhzhia region. Local residents are urgently evacuating, not even locking the doors of their own homes. According to Ukrainian soldiers, the situation in Pokrovsk is also critical. The military reports a new major threat to the front. The elite Russian UAV unit Rubicon, which burns everything in its path and numbers about 5,000 personnel. Analysts call it a real laboratory of the Russian army. Watch all this next. This is TSN.ua news. I'm Alina Toroshin. Subscribe to our channel, give us a like, and now let's get to the main news. The Russian army is advancing in the Zaporizhzhia region. The enemy has occupied a number of settlements. The situation remains most difficult in the Alexandrivka and Julipole directions. The enemy managed to advance, having superiority in manpower and equipment, and captured 3 settlements. This was reported on November 12th by the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky. Ukrainian units, part of the southern military grouping, continue fierce battles for Rivnopilya and Yablukove. At the same time, deep state analysts stated on November 12th that the Russians have already occupied Rivnopilya. The situation in Solodke is being clarified, which, according to preliminary information, is also under partial or full control of the Russians. Currently, the enemy is increasing its infantry capabilities to exert further pressure on the SOB positions. The enemy is taking advantage of gaps in certain sections of the front. After capturing Rivnopilya, an operational space opened up for them towards Julipole from the north. However, according to analysts, the enemy currently lacks the resources for a full-scale assault on this city. It is likely that the occupiers will focus on expanding their bridgehead. They may try to advance towards Varvarivka and simultaneously put pressure on logistics to complicate supplies to Julipole itself. Deep state experts suggest that in the near future, the enemy may resort to massive shelling of the city in order to gradually wear down our defenses. An escalation is also expected in the area of the village of Marfopil. It is from there that the Russians have repeatedly tried to break through to Julipole. Looking at the map, one can conclude that the occupiers will try to encircle this settlement. Once again, it's the same tactic that the occupiers have been using for quite a long time. In Avdiivka, in Bakhmut, in Vuhledar, Kurakove and Pokrovsk, to encircle and cut off logistics. Next, they employ fire suppression, artillery, rocket systems, drone strikes and aviation, which make movement on the approaches to the city deadly dangerous. The Institute for the Study of War writes that Russian forces are seeking to isolate Julipole from the northeast as part of a new operational concept aimed at gradually wearing down Ukrainian defenses through already familiar infiltration tactics, that is, by seeping into the city. On November 11th, the spokesperson for the Southern Defense Forces, Vladislav Voloshin, told RBC Ukraine that the defense forces had to withdraw from their positions in the areas of Novo-Ospenivske, Novyi, Okotnichye, Ospenivka, and Novomykolaivka in the Zaporizhzhia region. According to the spokesperson, the withdrawal from the positions was caused by massive assaults, more than 400 artillery strikes per day, and the destruction of shelters. However, analysts at Deep State drew attention to the fact that the Southern Defense Forces and the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine report different numbers of settlements. And the head of the assault troops, Valentin Manko, even stated that there are battles for Poltavka and Uspenivka, noting in particular that Ukrainian troops are present in the latter. He also reported on the clearing of Skladke and Rivnopilya from Russian forces. Analysts add that such statements undermine public trust. Roman Pohorilai, co-founder of the Deep State project, on his YouTube channel, questions whether the enemy was actually stopped here, since on the contrary, the adversary saw an opportunity in this area and concentrated its forces. He writes that since the beginning of the war, the occupier has been deliberately working for several months on ground operations, on communications in the direction of Julipole and Velikomykhailivka. The bombing of roads, strikes on highways and railway lines are creating the conditions for further offensive actions and complicating supply to the rear. Experts note that this campaign resembles previously used tactics. Exactly what was observed in the spring and summer of 25 near Pokrovsk, when preparatory strikes and the destruction of logistics preceded attempts to capture the city in the fall. Analysts are recording an intensification, enemy infiltration, movement in small groups under weather and fog conditions, attempts to break through defensive lines and seize advantageous positions. At the same time, there are reports of local successes, but without a decisive breakthrough. The aggressors specifically named the blocking of the highway as a separate objective. T0401 Pokrovsk Julipole. Cutting it off would significantly complicate the delivery of ammunition and reinforcements, so the fighting will involve not only assault operations but also systematic attacks on road infrastructure. In addition, according to observers, units from several Russian combined arms formations are involved in the operation in this sector, in particular elements of the Fifth Army, which operated from the east and northeast, attempting to create conditions for encirclement or local isolation. This makes the direction dangerous and requires increased attention to logistics and rotation of the defense. Almost 500 people remain in Julipole. The point of invincibility is still operating, which is almost the only coordination center for the local population. This was reported by the police of Zaporizhzhia region. Police officers working in Julipole say that if people had decided to leave even a month or two ago, there wouldn't be such a rush and excessive danger. Even property could have been saved. Now, however, evacuation must be carefully planned, as the enemy is literally hunting people with drones. Law enforcement officers are skilled in using anti-drone rifles, but this does not reduce the level of deadly danger. The officers shared a story where, during evacuation efforts, a Russian drone struck a civilian car right before people's eyes. Police say that in just one day, together with chaplains and volunteers, they evacuated 18 people from Julipole. A local resident says that it's no longer possible to live there. The carefully planned special operation could have been disrupted at any moment. The sky is red. The enemy has become more active in the Julipole direction, so they had to act extremely quickly and carefully. The military provided cover. Residents were taken out with almost no belongings. There wasn't enough space or time to take their property with them. Small bags, a few pets, and memories. That's all the evacuees were able to take with them. Some people didn't even lock their houses. People were evacuated from the city in 3 trips. The last one almost turned out to be fatal. The evacuation vehicle ran over a piece of shrapnel. They had to change a tire, and all this while constant radio reports warned that enemy drones were over the city. The exits from Julipole are under constant surveillance by enemy FPV drones, which makes the evacuation process extremely difficult. Currently, no humanitarian aid or pensions are being delivered to the city, and there has been no communication for the 4th year in a row. It is becoming increasingly difficult for police volunteers to evacuate people, so every day of delay could prove fatal. Law enforcement officers remind that for rescue, you can call 102. The police are always ready to help with evacuation.
Currently, about 500 people remain in the city of Julipole, as well as around 50 more individuals. In the villages of Dobropilya and Varvarivka, which are also subject to evacuation, the evacuation process is complicated by the fact that the Dobropilya-Varvarivka-Julipole road, as well as the entrance to Julipole-Zelene are under constant control by enemy UAVs. Constant shelling, both by tanks and artillery. Aerial strikes happen 3 to 4 times a day, and artillery shelling is ongoing. Drones are constantly present. Every 5 to 10 minutes, enemy UAVs circle over the city. In our city at the moment, pensions are being paid, not distributed.
On November 13th, Volodymyr Zelensky personally visited the Rivne direction in the Zaporizhzhia region to assess the situation on the ground and discuss with the military the key steps to strengthen the defense. The discussion focused on reinforcing personnel, supplying modern weapons and equipment, including light armored vehicles, as well as equipping units with electronic warfare systems to protect against enemy attacks. The situation in the Pokrovsk direction remains tense. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, says that there is no question of control over Pokrovsk or the encirclement of Ukrainian forces. And the president of Ukraine states, and I quote, "Our soldiers are the most important thing for us. However, we cannot abandon eastern Ukraine. The fighting for the city does not subside. The work here is hard, with constant tension and shifting positions." This was written on November 12th in his Telegram channel by a soldier with the call sign Machnoi. Ukrainian fighters managed to enter the private sector of the village of Shcherbakova, where they cleared several enemy positions. The situation in the city itself is unstable. Most districts remain gray zones without clear control by either side. The pace of fighting does not let up. Both sides are pushing, but so far the outcome remains undecided. If the dynamics shift against the AFU, then Mirnohrad will feel the consequences of this struggle. The soldier also says that the AFU's stated estimate of 300 to 800 occupiers does not reflect the actual intensity of the fighting. Judging by the nature of their actions and the pace of reinforcements, the occupiers have concentrated significantly more forces. It's difficult to give an exact number, but judging by their manner of action, these are not isolated rotations. These are well-organized, regular deliveries and reinforcements that allow the enemy not only to take over already cleared areas, but also to instantly regain control after battles. In other words, the enemy has sufficient personnel and material reserves for rapid counterattacks and to reclaim lost positions. The soldier says that the enemy has become more active north of Kotlin and is making a targeted advance along the Pokrovsk-Pavlohrad highway. The objective is clear: to intercept logistics and approach Hrishin from the south in order to seize our supply hub. If they manage to secure positions along the highway, traffic and the delivery of ammunition and reinforcements will become much more problematic. That is why this area is currently under heightened attention. The main direction of the enemy's attack remains Mirnohrad. The enemy is putting pressure on the southern part of the city while simultaneously advancing toward the Vysotsky bridgehead. Daily strikes with EFABs indicate that this zone is key. The southeastern part of Vysotsky is now effectively a grey zone where fierce battles are taking place. If the enemy secures a foothold on the bridgehead, it could give them not only a height advantage but also the ability to continue pressing on the city blocks. On the eastern flank of Mirnohrad, the occupiers are biting off individual neighborhoods, and urban combat is already underway here. The grey zone is expanding. Streets and blocks that were previously under control or in questionable control are turning into fields of fierce clashes. And the commander of the Shershny Dovbush unit, Vyacheslav, with the call sign Luti, said on Espresso TV that things are extremely difficult in this direction right now. The situation in Pokrovsk has been critical for a long time, where the conditions have significantly worsened visibility. High humidity, fog, and precipitation make it harder to monitor the enemy along the front line. The enemy is actively taking advantage of these factors, trying to advance with vehicles into the city and draw as many forces as possible into the fighting. The brigade also released a video from Pokrovsk. The city is ravaged by war. Ruins where life once thrived now bear the scars of heavy fighting. Another challenge for the Ukrainian army: an elite Russian drone unit called Rubicon, which is one of the most effective structures of the Russian Ministry of Defense in the field of combat drone operations. The Russian Center for Advanced Drone Technologies, Rubicon, first became widely known in October 2024 after the center was inspected by Russian Defense Minister Andrei Belousov. Its presence in certain areas of the front significantly complicates the work of Ukrainian units. After all, this unit has a significant advantage in the number of drones and their deployment capabilities. According to Ukrainian soldiers, Rubicon is capable of launching drones en masse even in difficult weather conditions. For example, in dense fog, where other units usually limit flights due to the risk of losses. This tactic allows the enemy not only to conduct reconnaissance, but also to maintain constant pressure from the air, forcing Ukrainian units to maneuver continuously and expend resources on countermeasures. The Russian drone unit Rubicon actively strikes at the most vulnerable points of Ukrainian defenses: logistics, rotation sites, and even shelters where soldiers are supposed to rest between battles. This was reported by Ukrainian serviceman Mykola Voroshno. He compared Rubicon to the Ukrainian Magyar's birds, but while Ukrainian drone operators have to rely on volunteer support and limited equipment supplies, the Russians have a significant advantage: almost unlimited access to resources. This means they can freely develop, produce, and deploy any types of UAVs, saturating the front lines with them on a massive scale and increasing the intensity of their strikes.
Grinding my teeth in anger, I watch their videos as they send 4 to 5 drones at a time onto a target right in the optics, simply leaving our guys with no chance. They keep flying non-stop, even in rain and wind, without worrying about losing a drone worth $1,000, $1,500. They even conduct simple reconnaissance now using optics, sending drones on one-way missions, because they have drones coming out of their ears. They don't care about the cost or the quantity, only the result matters to them. Meanwhile, we can't afford to make an extra flight because I only have 5 drones left at my position, and the warehouses are empty and nothing is expected to arrive anytime soon. That's the whole difference. They have unlimited resources while I only have 5 FPV drones left for the rest of the week. So do the math.
According to the Financial Times, Ukrainian drone operators have encountered a new and dangerous adversary, Russia's Rubicon unit. If earlier Ukrainian drone operators could operate against enemy positions with virtual impunity, now the situation has changed. Russian drone hunters are now tracking and eliminating Ukrainian pilots themselves. Experts estimate the number of Rubicon members at around 5,000 people. The unit has substantial funding and extensive capabilities, ranging from striking Ukrainian logistics and eliminating drone teams to training new operators for other Russian units. Robley, an analyst at the Philadelphia Institute, describes Rubicon not just as a combat unit, but as a true laboratory of the Russian army, where new tactics and technologies in the field of unmanned systems are tested. Ukrainian military personnel admit that the emergence of this unit has significantly complicated operations on the front line. According to the soldiers, without Rubicon, it would be much harder for the Russian infantry to advance. A soldier with the call sign Zoomer, who serves in the Pokrovsk direction, said that the Russians have so much manpower that they can operate around the clock, rotating every few hours without slowing the pace of their attacks. Ukrainian drone crews, on the other hand, have to work to the point of exhaustion without the possibility of regular rotation. Defending Pokrovsk used to feel like a celebration. That was until Rubicon arrived in this direction, Ukrainian soldiers add. It is worth adding that Ukrainian fighters report an unprecedented number of drones in the Pokrovsk direction. The sky is practically covered with enemy UAVs, and TSN journalist Yulia Kiriyenko writes in her Telegram channel, I quote, "You won't see large-scale infantry battles here because assaults are carried out by small groups for just a single high-rise or private house, and they are localized. You also won't hear the buzzing of drones in the sky, neither ours nor the Russian ones, even though they dominate over Pokrovsk and whoever has more of them holds the advantage. But you will see a scorched and empty city, which is now a battlefield. Gray because it's autumn, gray because it's the front line. The Russian army is trying to gain positions in the northern districts of the city of Kupansk in the Kharkiv region, while in recent days Ukrainian units have been actively conducting counterattacks, driving the enemy out of their fortifications. Urban combat continues. Forces are already directly involved in assault operations. This was reported on November 12th during the United News telethon by Viktor Trehubov, head of communications for the Joint Forces Group. Access to Kupiansk is complicated for both sides. Every attempt to break through there turns into a complex, resource-intensive operation, especially when it comes to delivering equipment or transport convoys. This makes logistics a critical factor in the current battles. According to Trehubov, UAVs and assault infantry play a key role. Along the access routes and lines of communication, a large number of drones can be seen, ready to strike at any movement. That's why the main burden of the operation falls on the shoulders of assault troops and UAV operators. The situation is further complicated by aviation and the use of guided aerial bombs. The proximity of the border with the Russian Federation gives the enemy an advantage in airstrikes, which increases the overall threat to offensive operations. Right now, success depends on the courage and coordination of Ukrainian infantry and assault units and their ability to operate effectively under intense aerial and drone pressure. And what do you think? How will events unfold from here? Write your comments below this video and stay with TSN so you don't miss the most important updates. And I say goodbye to you until the next episodes.